Yo, what is good, everybody, and welcome to part 3 of Sharing Black Stories during Black History Month. I'm with somebody that has some really, really cool experience in the sports industry, and it isn't necessarily between the lines in that regard, the way that we've shown before. So, to preface, while many of these conversations to this point have been through the lens of the athlete, it's very much been, it's very much to me worth shining a light on those that are working behind the scenes. And not everyone that loves sports will play at a super high competitive level. I've kind of identified this after the first two talks with Bruce and with Nikira. But working in this in the industry is definitely a dream for many. So this is a peek into that sector. With all that said, I'm here super hyped to bring a conversation with Isha Rahman. Isha, how we doing?
Good. How are you, Kyle?
Good, I'm good. Appreciate you coming on. Thank you for taking the time. And even though you kind of want to play it down a little bit and be like, yo, like I'm just starting out, like you have some really cool experiences that I'm super hyped to just bring to the viewers. So with that said, yo, let's just hop right into it. Quick run through as to like how we know each other. I've mentioned it like super briefly, like I used to work for the World Baseball Classic, but I never really got into any depth at all as far as like what that job entailed. So yeah, what did our job entail?
I love how you're just putting it on me, even though your viewers know you better. But basically, Kyle and I were each in charge of two national teams. So I had Great Britain and France, and you had Germany and what other team?
I had the Philippines.
Philippines, right. So you had Germany and the Philippines, and basically for those national teams, we were putting on the Olympics of baseball, just because baseball's not always in the Olympics. And we were in charge of so much different stuff. Like we had to do flights for the teams, we had to help them get their visas, we had to make sure that guys were eligible to play. And sometimes it's not as simple as like I was born in this country with my parents, where it was like something I was dealing with was like, if your parents were born before 1970 in the Bahamas, then you were a citizen of this country. So then like you're eligible, like all this crazy stuff. So a lot of it was like paperwork and figuring stuff out when we were in New York. And then when we went for the actual tournament in Arizona, it was basically being the middleman and being the person that everybody could come to, like coaches, players, like people from MLB, like literally anyone, if they had any questions or needed anything regarding your national team, like that's what we did. And it was a great week that we were there. And then obviously, because COVID came, we couldn't even play the first game of the tournament and we had to send everyone back. But I made friends, Kyle over here, so it was a good experience.
Yeah, no, definitely. You said it. And I think that um, whether it was for travel or even just in our interactions, like that job in hindsight kind of made us take on like a really worldly view, like a very global view of the
Mm-hmm.
game, of how the game is played there, how it's approached there, and also just like how they carry business out, like cultural differences and even time differences. I mean, you've had your fair share of, 3, 4, 5 a.m. calls.
Oh my God, yeah.
But yeah, I mean, that's in the past, and currently, bigger, better things for you, which is why I was super hyped to bring you on, among several other reasons. New job, only maybe like a week or 2 weeks into it. The She is an assistant in minor league operations for the Tampa Bay Rays. Extremely, extremely just talented organization. They make very good use out of what they have, whether that's payroll, small city, you name it. But yo, like, what does that role like? What are your duties?
um, it's a lot of player focused stuff, which is like what I've always wanted to do. And I think like World Baseball Classic helped me realize more that like I really want to be there for the players. So a lot of it is working with players who are recently drafted, recently traded, or international players, and pretty much making sure that they understand how things work as a professional player, as a Ray, or just like as a player in the United States, because like some of them haven't gotten that experience yet, and helping guide them and be there for them. But then like since I'm in the player development department, player development touches like every single department in like all of baseball. So like I'm doing stuff for like every other department too. Like I've been working with our hitting coordinator and I've been going through like all of our hitting materials. Like I have access to a bunch of different stuff so I can just read and learn about the Rays, about baseball, just like why we did certain things, like which as everyone's seen, like a lot of things have worked out. So like it's cool to see like the thinking that came behind all of that. So I love it. I'm really excited to like finally meet the players and like help them in person. I am excited to eventually go to the DR and like meet our guys at the academy. And I'm just like, I'm stoked for this job. Like I'm so excited. I don't know if you can tell.
Yeah, no, I mean the energy is definitely radiating through. It's just such a perfect fit given everything that you've done and then everything that you're about to do. So with that said though, there was something that we talked about a little bit offline. We were chatting via text, just catching up maybe a few weeks ago. And I think it kind of weaves in nicely here, just the conversation of being a woman in professional sports in the professional sports industry. I'd say that it's a lot more males, I feel like, in many of these roles to this
Yeah.
point, and certainly continues to be. But I mean, if you just want to talk a little bit about just like what it's like to just be a woman in these spaces, what it's like to be a Black woman in these spaces that you've been, and then where first foresee yourself going.
It can be difficult. One thing that I've learned just like in general, like something I learned was connections are always a big thing, but being able to find connections who look like you, like that's a huge thing. And I don't have many people who look like me in the industry, like in my exact role. And so back in the day, I wanted to be an agent, and I'm still kind of like so on that. We'll see. But like when I told people that, they were like, every single person told me I should reach out to Lonnie Murray because she's like a Black female agent. So I like everybody I've spoken to in the past, they're always like, do you know Lonnie? Have you spoken to Lonnie? Like, and that's really good that people think of someone who I can relate to, but then it's really bad because she's the only person that people can think of. So like stuff like that's hard. And like obviously she can't take every single Black female who wants to get into sports under her wing. So I mean, I think she tries, but it is really hard. So that's kind of been hard, like finding representation and someone like I can look up to and help. But then at the same time, it's motivated me to be that person for other people. So like I even put it in my LinkedIn, like once I finally got this job, I was like, reach out if you want any advice or if you want to talk through the industry. And over the summer, I had a ton of people reaching out to me before I had this position. And then now that I have this position, I have a lot of people like reaching out for follow-up calls or people who I've never spoken to before. And they're just like, hey, like, can you help me out? I'm interested in this, or I go to school for this. And like, it makes me really happy and obviously overwhelmed because like when a lot of people reach out, you have to make sure you can keep track of everything. But like, I never want to be that person who big leagues anyone. And it's just like, oh, like, I don't feel like talking to this student and just like blow them off. So I don't know. It's difficult, but it's also motivated me to try to change the industry and make it easier for the people who look like me behind me.
Yeah, I love, love, love everything you said. There were three things that I extracted from that I really loved. One, it's a very small, interconnected world, the sports world is, and it's just funny. Like we were talking about this the other day. Lonnie Murray represents Bruce Maxwell, who clearly, I have a relationship with. It's funny, actually. He FaceTimed me the other day and he was like, "What's up, bro? Give me your mailing address." And I was like, sure, bro. Like, are you like are you like plotting something on my house, on my place of residence? And he was like, no, like I was going through my Germany stuff and I'm gonna like sign a jersey and send it to you. I was like, dope,
Aw,
thank you.
really
So I'm
sweet.
hype about that. Yeah. So again, just super small interconnected world. The second thing was when you stated about, trying to look toward people that look like you in the industry, like in those rooms, in those, four walls, kind of gravitate like this person of color talking to person of color here, kind of gravitate toward those people in these corporate places,
Mhm.
right? Because like you can give each other that little look from across the room, like, you saw what I just said? Or did you read the tone in that email? Because
Like mispronouncing names, like that's
exactly.
one of those little things that we both went through.
Yeah, no, definitely. Whether it's my last name, your first name. And it's funny, like this is such a small, tiny instance that you might not even remember. But one time you were like, yo, like I'm gonna grab coffee, like, do you want anything? And I was like, I'm gonna just go with you to go for the walk. And it was like maybe our first or second week, and we're walking down the hallway, and I was like, hey, like it is pronounced Aisha, right? And you were like, yeah,
I remember this.
yes. And what's funny, like the only reason that stuck with me was that I was like, it's such a small clarifying question, but it goes such a long way because
Mm.
sometimes you don't know the pronunciation of someone's name like 3, 4, 5 months into it. By then it's too late, and it's just like, oh, I can't really correct them now. So that's a really tiny thing as well. And then my very last third thing on everything that you just shared, because it was so perfectly and eloquently put, was not forgetting about like where you came from, right? Like when people reach out to you and it's just like, wait, like I used to be that person trying to like hit up that person. It just seemed like they were up here like on a pedestal, like, oh, there's no way. But it's like, no, no, like it takes one message. So everything you said was really nicely put. And you know, if anything, it kind of leads a little bit into the next question. Is just as far as like your favorite moment on the job. I know you just, you know, started to get into it. You're slowly immersing yourself into it, but it could have been a past interaction you've had with, let's say, a player, something you did that helped the team or organization overall, but just maybe your favorite professional moment.
Um, I'd say my favorite, this is kind of weird, but my favorite moment actually came before I got the job.
Hmm.
um, so like, I mean, I've loved a lot of things like in this job, but I'd say it was that when I was looking for a job, I reached out to Eric Neander, who's the GM of the Rays. So like that's shooting for the stars. But I'd met him once 2 years ago, and he was speaking at the Buck O'Neill conference this year, like the virtual conference. And I was just like, oh, like I've met him before, like maybe I should reach out to him. And at that point, I knew like teams weren't really hiring. It was more just like so I could get advice. So I reached out to him, I emailed him. And I think like 10 minutes later, he emailed me back and he's like, of course, I remember you, like said some really nice stuff. And he's like, would you like to set up a phone call on Monday? And I was just like shocked. Um, so I was like, yeah. And so we had our phone call that Monday, and it wasn't just like, oh, like tell me about yourself. He's like, tell me what you've done in the last 2 years since I met you. And it just felt so good just because it was like he remembers everything from like the pronunciation of my name from the one day that we met all the way up to like everything I had done till 2018. So I was like, okay, like, and I told him like the things, and he's like, wow, like we talked through it. And then he told me some of the stuff he did and like talked about things that made him nervous when he was speaking at that conference. And I don't know, it just made me feel really good and comfortable. Like I've spoken to other teams before and like hit it off, but that was like at a different level where I was like, I'm ready to be a Ray. Like this is the place for me. Cause like to reach up to someone that high and have him remember me, not be like, oh yeah, like I think I spoke to her once, and to like be able to have a real conversation with him, which ended up turning into a job. Like, I don't know, it just felt really good. And it was like the first indication for me that I was in the right place, or that I was about to be in the right place.
That's a really good story, really good example because like you feel like you're seen for, you know, the quality of the person you are rather than just, you know, another person that you know you cross paths with coincidentally in the past. And plus, like you can tell a lot about the the strength of an organization based on the quality of the content of leadership's character, you know. And I think that
Mm-hmm.
like his really spoke volumes there, so that's super dope. And then to probably take a step back, there's probably a lot of people watching this that like they love sports, they love the storytelling behind sports, and like, yo, like working in sports would be cool, working in pro sports for this team or that league would really be a dream. I'm gonna preface this question by saying that we're still figuring it out a little bit too. Me more so than you, I feel. You ain't going to admit it, but how exactly does one get into the sports industry? We can draw on our personal, you know, experiences here. Essentially, this is a section for recent college graduates or even just young professionals. And like, hey, I want to work in sports. So this is kind of for both of us. And of course, I'm gonna have you lead off. How exactly does one get into the sports industry?
I love this question because I'm going to say something that people in college, like it's going to bring a lot more people in the sports world. So we're about to have a lot more competition. Your major does not matter. I was a human biology major pre-med, and it wasn't like I was doing that and I switched up. I graduated with that, was going to go to med school. Like that was the plan up until 2 months after I graduated. And it's not to say I didn't have sports experience before that. Like I played sports my entire life. I even played a year of club softball at USC, and I worked for a USC baseball team. But what it was for me, like I was always like, oh, like everyone who does like sports management, sports business, or like any sort of business has a leg up on me. But I realized if you know how to apply the skills that you've learned in school or in any other experience and say how you can use them in this new field, like you're golden. And once you get that first opportunity, you just keep building off of that. And then the other thing is connections. Like at USC, they always told us like you have the Trojan Network, like it's going to be huge for you. And it's true. Like the Trojan Network got me to a certain point, but then also making sure to keep in touch with certain people or to like shoot them a random text. Like I a couple weeks ago sent you a picture of something. I was like, hey, like look at this. And then that's how we got to this point now. But like just staying in touch with people and like making sure that they're genuine connections, not just like some like, oh, like we work together, I better text them happy opening day and then like never hear from them again until the next opening day. Just like actually establish connections, get to know people, and like just keep reaching out. Like I've had so many people ignore me or like start to respond and then just like ghost out of nowhere. And you just have to keep reaching out to more people because there will be someone who's out there who wants to help you. So that's my advice.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, authenticity matters. There's a lot of times where a lot of my peers will reach out to individuals in positions that they'd like to have one day, and it's really only in times of need or like requests, like, hey, like, yo, can you do this? Like, hey, do you got time for that? But it's like, bro, like, if I'm them, like, why would I do that for you if we haven't chatted in, you know, 2 opening days, right? Like, continuing to have like that authentic, just like, hey, like, yo, just checking in, bro, like legit, just in your voice, in your vernacular, be yourself.
Mhm.
Which I think especially matters for us because sometimes, and this could be a whole different conversation, but um, there are studies that resumes with difficult to pronounce last names or names that are, X-ray sounding might be held to either a different standard or even just totally looked over. Do your
Mhm.
research on that if you're a viewer and you don't believe me, because it is very much real. I'm going to end on this. A time where you can recall that sport can really, really unite us. I think there have been a lot of inspiring moments, some that you may have even been a part of. Just an experience that you can recall of a time that sport can really bring people together.
Can I do two?
Of course, yeah, sure.
Okay. First one, easy, the Olympics. Like everyone cares about every sport that you didn't care about the last 4 years, and you're just united and you're like, this is my country, this is it. And not just the country you live in. It's like, my parents are here. Like my parents are from Sierra Leone. I'm like a dual citizen. So it's like, oh, my parents are Sierra Leonean, that kid's Sierra Leonean. Like, let's cheer for them. And everyone's like watching the same thing, cheering for the same thing. Like Olympics, World Cup. That's something that unites everybody. And then I guess just like, I don't know, a first in sports is a big thing too. So like Bruce Maxwell was the first to kneel, and you like get behind that because you're like, I believe in, like, I guess it divides some people, unites others, but like it can kind of, you get behind something that everyone believes in, or just like, I don't know, the first person to unanimously be voted into the Hall of Fame. Like everyone gets behind that. They're like, wow, this is super exciting. Like I feel like just big first moments, like Jackie Robinson, obviously, huge first. Like everybody loves him. Like that's just a thing. Like anytime there's something big or like history is about to be made, like it brings everybody together.
Yeah, you said it. Firstly, I love the Olympics and the World Cup. Those are two really good examples. Like, it's funny, I never thought I'd be, like wrapped up in arms with like a Colombian man in an Astoria sports bar in the heart of Queens. You know what I mean? Like rooting for one team just because one of my friends is Colombian and we were spending, the day there. So it's funny how sport can unite us in that regard. And then, like you said, like the historic standpoint as well. The historic standpoint, I think sometimes we don't even realize that it's happening or like what exactly, like if it's like the first ever to do this or that. But it definitely brings people together and people are like, yo, like, I don't, if this isn't the first time that it's happened, I don't remember the last time that it's happened. And that can really definitely bring together people as well.
Mhm.
That's everything I had for me and just my little talking prompts. But like, floor is yours. If you have any key takeaways, either from this discussion, from just the series overall, please take it away.
Okay. I guess I want to talk a bit about being like black in sports, because that's another thing that like we touched on a little bit, like with being a black woman, but not just like being black. And I'd say like a lot of times it can be difficult. Like there can be the name thing. One thing that I go through is like when I change my hairstyle from braids to like just having it down, or to like gorilla glue hair girl, like sleeking it back, like someone's always going to say something. And like it gets to the point where it's like I don't even want to change my hair because it's like, oh, I don't want people to say something. So like little things like that can start to get to you, but don't let it. Like I've changed my hair 3 times in the like few weeks that I've been with the Rays, and I haven't had any comments like one way or another. It's just like I know they notice because it's one of those looks where it's like, oh, she looks different, but we just go about business, and that makes me feel really comfortable there. And then just like other little things, like speak up when there are certain issues that you think aren't right. Like with my name, for example, I used to just let people pronounce it like whatever way. And then someone was like, well, that's your name. Like, that's who you are. Like, you need to correct people no matter how uncomfortable it is, because it's probably even more uncomfortable for them. And it gets even more embarrassing for them if you're doing it repeatedly for months on end. And I'm like, you know what? That's so true. Because at that point, it's not my issue, it's their issue, but they're making it my issue by mispronouncing it. So, like, little stuff like that. And then just being like, happy with who you are. Like don't try to be someone you're not, and don't try to like erase certain parts of yourself. Like if I were to become the first Black female GM, which that's not what I want to be, but like if I were to do that, I wouldn't just be like, no, I'm just another GM, because there are girls out there who need someone to be like, I'm the first Black female GM, because then they can hopefully become that. So I don't know, just be comfortable with who you are, everything you are, and speak up when you need to. Because if you don't speak up, no one's going to speak for you.
Yeah, just some beautiful points that you made. Like even again, like even just down to appearance, right? Like you stated, just your hair, like the way you wear your hair, like, yo, this is me. And it tied into like your third and last point there of like, I'm not going to diminish who I am, or try to just alter either my appearance or how I feel based on your comfort. That is not my problem. That is not my business. Like who I am is who I am. And when I step into that room, I've been hired for a reason. Clearly I've been trusted, and I'm going to do my job regardless of how you feel across the room about how I present myself, because this is a representation of my culture, of my people, and really just like who I am, just like, spiritually. So very, very powerful stuff there. And I mean, again, it's stuff that I am so happy that you brought to the table here. I'm glad that you didn't let this call end without stating that, because it is super, super invaluable insight for sure. So with all that said, I hope y'all appreciated this conversation. I know I did, for real, because listen, like not everybody's going to go pro. Not everyone's going to be the all-time scoring leader of a sports program, but there are a whole lot more people working on the administrative side in this industry than there are like suiting up in uniforms between the lines every day, getting paid dozens of millions of dollars to do it. So with that said, Isha, thank you once more. We'll stay on for a couple minutes, but I'm going to end the recording here.
Thank you.